housing. But just a few of them that I have some data points for. The industry is definitely changing in a number of ways. Certainly from the evolving wants and needs of the new consumer to, where they're gonna live, where they're gonna be cared for. That's the push and pull towards seniors housing sweet spot. I'll talk about that. And then also, I wanna talk a little bit about wage growth and where that falls in relation to rent growth. I want to talk a little bit about consolidation, and certainly I want to kind of touch on the demographics, just leave you with some ideas and thoughts about where the industry is going and what some of the opportunities and challenges are going forward. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the challenge, and I'm going to move to this chart here. Let's talk about wage growth exceeding rent growth. And, the issue of labor obviously has been talked about a lot here today. Where we're going to find workers, how we're going to attract and keep them. It's one of those things. It's a very tough topic the industry's going to need to solve. So, finding and keeping workers obviously is critical to a community's bottom line. And one of the big parts of an operating budget is salaries. And for many operators, that can be as much as 60% of their operating budget. So, it's important to take a look at how wages are growing. And what I've done here with this chart is I'm showing asking rent growth for independent living and assisted living. Independent living is the blue line, assisted living is the orange line, against wage growth for assisted living workers. And what we see here is that the average hourly earnings wage growth for assisted living employees as of the second quarter was 4.6%. And that compares to about 2.5% with the assisted living rent growth. So there's a very wide disparity there. And really, that 4.6% wage growth for assisted living workers is likely very understated. This is data that comes from the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics. But as I've traveled around the country, I've talked to operators, and many of them are saying, and probably you are too, in a lot of cases, double-digit wage growth for assisted living workers and very low rent growth in these areas. So, operators are really starting to feel the squeeze with regard to, keeping NOI at a good level.
I have a question for you. It has nothing to do with Florida, but it has something to do with Florida that very well in the next few years. Some states are starting to change the regulations on staffing requirements. Florida really hasn't seen that recently, which is why I fully expect it. Florida will see it soon. Virginia being the most telling for this past year. They required their assisted living or their memory care to go from 125 that evening to 110. So overnight shift, you've got a 1-to-10 ratio, whereas before you may have 3 caregivers, you may have 7, 8. So we saw that there was a very high spike in rates because a lot of the market was, so have you seen any data that reflects that? And so I'm just talking about a couple local markets in Virginia. So some of the states that are now changing their regulations, are you seeing this much of a disparity in the rates versus salaries? Because in Virginia right now, there would be a much less disparity between the two because we know there was a huge rate hike, but not a salary hike, so you just had more staffing. So do you see anything that reflect that?
I can't point to anything specifically, state-wise. I don't know. Does anybody here in the audience, can they speak to that a little bit more, a little bit closer to that?
On what?
It hasn't happened in Florida. That's why I was asking you. If you from a national level have seen something. I operate on the East Coast. Oh.
Yeah, I can't say that I've seen data that points to that personally. It's not something that we're tracking. But
yeah, no, let me rephrase what I'm asking. Because the factor that I'm asking is, the market, when there was data to back up why we were increasing rates. So here's, maybe this is a better question. Is the reason we're not increasing rates is we're scared. So, and the reason I say that is when we had the staffing requirements by the state, and we increased rates across in Virginia, there was not a backlash from the residents and families. So we were able to raise rates. So that's my question is, in this situation where the rates for the employees have changed, we're not increasing rates because we're fear of census. So the question is in the states like Virginia that have shown, is there a reflection of maybe almost rates and census data to back up the fact that we in Florida should not be scared to raise rates?
I think that's all market specific, and there's a lot of things that go into, obviously, whether or not a property wants to increase rates. A lot of it is market factors, whether or not the market can support increasing those rates. So I can't answer the question, from an operating perspective, but I think it's certainly, something that's market specific and needs to be looked at on an individual community level. Let's see. One other thing that's a potential challenge or a potential positive, depending on how you want to look at it, is consolidation. I know this is it's a hot topic in Florida. There's been a lot of consolidation here, a lot of consolidation all over the country. This chart is showing the percentage of units that are operated in the 99 primary and secondary markets as of the end of 2017. And the data's a little old, but it's still pretty relevant. The highest percentage of units, which is about 43%, were operated by operators with 10 properties or more. Almost 2/3 were operated by operators that had 9 properties or less, and about 1/4 of the properties, about half of which were mom and pops or smaller, were operated by a single property operator. And due to some developers kind of missing the mark, including some inexperience in the seniors housing and care sector, there's been a growing number of distressed deals. Obviously with the lower occupancy rates we've been seeing in some particular markets. And some of these deals are going to need capital infusion, recapitalizations, new partners. Some of the smaller operators are still seeking liquidity and trying to scale their businesses. And really what we're going to see is it's like a continuation of consolidation. Some of these businesses aren't able to kind of continue to scale up. It's really going to set the stage for some more consolidation as some of the larger entities are buying up the smaller entities that need that cash flow. So there's a lot of money that's still sitting on the sidelines. Senior living is really flush with a variety of capital sources. New operators and new entrants that haven't been in the sector are looking to get into the sector. But as new players kind of continue to enter the space, we're really going to see some more consolidation over the next few years. Yeah.
So in Florida, about 50% of this market space are the smaller homes. And so is the trend moving towards the smaller homes, away from the smaller homes, or is there no trend whatsoever?
I can't speak specifically to how this is trending. However, I can say, just from my experience in talking with investors, there are opportunities to buy up some of these smaller places in order to kind of consolidate more operations. And some of these regional players are looking to buy up some of these smaller properties, because the smaller properties are struggling in some respects and need to kind of offload their operations to some of the larger players. I'm getting the red card. I know. Okay. Well, it seems like I'm running out of time. Does anybody want to talk about any of the other have time to talk about any of the other ideas that I had.
Could you go over the push-pull?
I will. I'll try to do that relatively quickly. There are a lot of trends that are pushing and pulling towards the seniors housing kind of sweet spot, I should say. First, we're seeing this area, which is the continuum of care that's offered in seniors housing, and it goes from left to right, from age restricted all the way up to hospital and rising levels of acuity. So starting at the top, the factors that are pushing towards higher levels of acuity include the aging of society, the demographic age wave, rising levels of acuity and disability levels, along with older and frailer residents who are entering our properties, as I mentioned before, and pushing residents up the continuum of care. Now also, we're seeing rising penetration rates. In some markets, you can certainly see the penetration rates are rising. Senior demographics, as we talked about, are improving. And people are increasingly recognizing the benefits of seniors housing, with greater awareness, and it's resulting in greater levels of demand. So penetration rates can also be considered, in another way as acceptance rates. So penetration rates are rising. Social engagement, support, and emotional well-being is important, moving this up the scale. We know that there's a number of studies that indicate that increased functionality and improved quality of life for residents is, increasing, there's greater social engagement, there's greater nutrition, there's more focus on wellness and physical activity. There's also the growing awareness among the public of the huge population health problem and loneliness, and seniors housing is uniquely positioned to address that major health problem. And if baby boomers retire, there's really going to be fewer caregivers. And there's a chart in the deck, which you can look at on your own. It's really going to describe how the ratio of caregivers, those being the adult children, typically the adult daughter, will be being reduced over time from 7-to-1 right now to about 4-to-1, about 2030, and that's because the fact that baby boomer women have fewer children, and also the baby boomers are moving from the givers of care to our seniors, to the receivers of care. So in addition to labor shortages, there's going to be some shortages in informal caregivers that are going to be pushing demand towards seniors housing. Factors that are moving the other direction, down towards lower levels of acuity, include population health management, meaning the aggregating of patient data, technology, the analysis of that data to improve outcomes not only for broad populations, population health, but also individuals, which is going to be creating some customization of care treatment plans and wellness plans, and that's really being helped in part by technology, big data, and the amount of information that's being moved around. Post-acute care collaboration is another huge thing to consider, and it's emerging among both upstream and downstream, creating partnerships up and down the continuum.
Is that the Medicare issue that the hospitals are struggling with?
Yeah,
Readmissions?
it is, and that was, certainly, there's ancillary service providers, there's hospital partners, there's all kinds of partnerships that are starting to come together to place the resident in the right setting with the right amount of care. And there's a lot of risk sharing going on, which was my final point there. And it's a healthcare system, and it's moving from volume to value. So we're moving from a fee-for-service based system to a value-based framework in which reimbursement's no longer going to be based on the volume of services, but on the rewards of performance. So there's going to be a lot of risk sharing. Policy is shifting risk from providers and rewarding outcomes achieved at lower costs. And I won't talk about it because I know I gotta let you guys go, but you can take a look at this chart. that talks about how, providers will be moving folks into lower cost settings, certainly down from the hospital, long-term care hospitals, into rehab, into skilled nursing, into home health, into assisted living. These are settings that are, obviously, the state is a little old, but it makes the point. These are lower cost settings. Certainly a lot of the Medicare Advantage is also changing rules to allow some services to be provided in these settings, the assisted living, the home health. But also, I just want to say one final thing. NIC really believes that consumers are going to demand, technology is going to enable, and payers are increasingly going to pay for services to be provided in the right place where consumers want to have them, and often that's going to be in their homes. And whether or not that's in their own single-family home, or in assisted living, or in skilled nursing, or somewhere else on the continuum, even independent living, more and more policymakers are going to be allowing those things to be occurring. And really, the point I'm trying to make is there's a lot of opportunities, there's some challenges with labor, but the future for seniors living is quite good. Demand is high, and certainly, I can't show you right now, but with regard to the demographics, we're on the cusp of a major age wave, and really we're looking at probably the next 7 to 10 years before that really hits. And in fact, by 2029, just leave with this last data point, the oldest baby boomer in 2029 will be 83, which is right now pretty much the average age of entry. So we've got a lot of changes going on with policy, demographics, labor availability, and all these things really going to play a part in the next 10 years. So that was kind of quick on the end there with the trends, but certainly there's some more slides in here that you can take a look at. And if you have any questions, we can talk now, we can talk later, you guys can contact me and we can.
How can we get a copy of the presentation?
Oh, that's a good question. Has the association been allowing the sharing of these presentations?
Yes.
They have?
Yes.
Okay, so you'll make it available.
I'll check the council. More than likely, yes.
Um,
But we are making it available for sharing.
okay, great. Thank you.